that to have something like that take place and then turn around and try to explain that to people, it is a real interesting test of your stability, because it does tend to put you outside of the norm. Well, in that as well, I thought, well, wow, this is such a neat experience. I need to tell as many people as possible, try and get some feedback. In doing that, I think I probably had people look at me a little more interestingly than what I would have liked, including my parents. Once I told them what happened, they absolutely thought I was nuts. They wanted to write it off to drugs, basically. Now, I've got to be honest. In that part of my life, I did experiment with hallucinations. I think a lot of people my age did. However, there was nothing associated with that particular time frame and that experience. Believe me, I wanted there to be, but after a while, but in all honesty, there wasn't. What they had me do, though, was be a psychologist, and in that process, after about the third visit, his name was Dr. Abel, and I got to admit, he was very able. He explained to me, he says, you know, Bruce, you're not crazy. He says, for some reason, you're going through a spiritual awakening. You've got all the classic signs. I don't understand it, but this is what it seems to be. And he said, have you ever had your cards read? And I said, no. He said, really? I said, what do you mean? And he said, well, come with me. And he had his office in a 2-story house in Anderson, Indiana. And he took me upstairs, and he opened the door. And at the time, my heart just basically exploded in warmth. As I was looking around the room, I had a lot of very connected feelings, for lack of a better, with a lot of the signs. He had things hanging from the ceiling, artifacts, I think is probably the closest term. And he also had a lot of books and things on the wall. It was like a metaphysical bookstore in that one room, which in the mid-70s, there weren't that many of them around. Well, he said, come on in, sit down. So we sat down. There was a card table with a deck of tarot cards right inside the door. As he was reading the cards, he basically fed me the same information that was what I received. Now, after I'd gone through the experience with my parents and getting the rejection from them, I held back. I was not completely open and honest with him. So when he told me that, I thought, well, it's time for me to open up and share the rest of the story. Because I did tell him about the white light and going into the spirit, but I didn't tell him the entirety of the experience. And so here I am, getting this feedback from someone who's a professional, having this experience, having my parents on one side, trying to explain that I'm crazy, or not necessarily I'm crazy, but definitely, in their opinion, going down the wrong path. What do you do? All I could do at that point in time was just take it in, deal with it the best I could, and continue with seeking a somewhat normal life. In the next couple of years, I had experimented a lot with various powers of mind, things that for some reason were made available, whether it was my openness or my naivety, I don't know. But these things, for instance, one of the particular things that I tried wasn't sure would work to begin with, there was a group of us that had kind of fallen into being able to use telepathy. And we began experimenting with that. There was, I'm guessing, 7 or 8 of us around campus, and we started playing with it, kind of projecting another and saying he needs here, at a certain time, and so on and so forth. And showing up and acknowledging that that message was sent and received. Well, there was an evening that a friend of mine that I had began this experience with telepathy. He had gone up to Canada and had stayed the summer with his great-grandfather in a log cabin with basically no modern conveniences. So as I was thinking about him, because winter quarter was coming up, and I thought, well, he ought to be here. Where's he at? So I laid down, I closed my eyes, and I generally use music to help facilitate the types of things. And this particular time there was a band that from the Midwest. Some of you may have heard of it. They're called White Witch. And the song that I picked was called Help Me Lord. Well, this was basically kind of a new agey type rock song back in the 70s. Well, as I was listening to this, I closed my eyes, went within myself, pictured his eyes, looked into his face, imagined grabbing him by the shoulders and standing him up so that I could see him, full body. Talked with him a little bit. Had another friend of ours that had, a girl that had been living with him the year before, also came through for a moment, and the three of us talked. The end of the song came. I came back into conscious awareness, so to speak, opened my eyes up, and went on about my business. Well, the following weekend, I called his parents' house to see when he was going to be home. He answers the phone, slightly out of breath. And I said, "Man, where you been?" He says, "Well, I'll tell you the truth. I just got home. I knew that was you on the phone, so I ran in to answer it." I said, "Far out. I got something I want to talk to you about." A couple hours, enough time to check in with the parents and get everything settled. He says, "Yeah, wonderful." So I went over to pick him up and said hi to his parents, got out the car. First thing I asked him, and I wanted to keep it as non-committal as possible, or as non-directional in getting him to tell me what happened. So I simply said, "Hey, catch any, what happened last weekend? Catch any black?" And he looked at me right square in the eyes and said, "Yeah, you son of a bitch, you woke me up out of bed." And I said, "What?" And he said, "Yeah, I was laying there, sound asleep. Somebody grabbed me by the shoulders, sat me up in bed. I opened my eyes up, and there was your face." I said, "Oh, shit." He said, "Yeah." He says, "And behind your face was Carolyn's face." And that was this other woman. Well, a week and a half later, he got a note in the mail that was on one of these Krishna camp pamphlets. I'm sure you've probably seen them. The address of Santa Barbara was circled, and Carolyn's handwriting on the bottom of it said, "Enjoyed the conversation." Neither one of us had heard from her for almost a year. Now, here again, here's some things that seem to be available. How do you use them? How do you bring it into a workable environment? At that point in time, it was difficult enough for me just to maintain my normal life, or whatever that was. I was still trying to get through college, and I ended up dropping out and going through some different things on my own. Basically, my parents decided that it was time for me to stop and take breaks. And this is a little bit difficult for me to express, but yet I feel it's necessary in order to maintain my own integrity. But they had to, or they felt necessary anyway, to hospitalize me for a while because they thought that I was off on the deep end. Be that as it may, I worked through it, and I found out by dealing with the people in the hospital, I learned a tremendous amount of how we mistreat each other, of how we don't listen to each other. of the things that we attempt to project on each other